Sports lovers, happy holidays and welcome to Global Sports from a Caribbean perspective. Ultimate place for all things sports. The best games, best teams, best players, the best takes on global sports from a Caribbean perspective. I'm your host, Shabba, and I'll be here to break down the action from last week's Europe top 5 leagues, break down some NBA action, as well as some African Cup of Nation action as well. So we're gonna begin by speaking on this day in history as we usually do. Today is December the 24th. As you can see, it's Christmas Eve. I have my Santa hat on and we're festive here at GSCP. So on this day in history, in 1985, former Juventus midfielder Michel Platini was named the best player in Europe for the third consecutive time. So this is a significant piece of history as Platini was named the Ballon d'Or winner for the third consecutive time in 1985. So shout out to Mr. Platini, who was also UEFA president. So we'll move on to Europe's top 5 leagues and we'll start in the Premier League as usual. So we're going to start with Newcastle 2, Chelsea 2. Chelsea rallied from 2-0 down to salvage a point from an absorbing 2-all draw with Newcastle at St. James's Park. Nick Woltemade became the fourth Newcastle player to score twice in the opening 20 minutes of a Premier League game at St. James's Park after Andy Cole versus Liverpool in 1993, Duncan Ferguson against Southampton in 2000, and Jacob Murphy versus Tottenham in 2023. But after he passed up his hat-trick chance, Chelsea showed great character to recover from a game in which they lost the expected goals battle by more than a goal. This was just the fourth time Chelsea have avoided defeat when trailing by 2 goals at halftime in an away Premier League match, also doing so versus Sheffield Wednesday in 1992 to salvage a 3-all draw, against West Brom in 2020 to salvage another 3-all draw, and against Aston Villa in 2024 with a 2-all draw. So Chelsea remain on fourth on 29 points, 10 points behind Arsenal, and are now 7 points behind Villa in third, who they face this weekend at Stamford Bridge. Newcastle continue their up and down season, remaining 11th on 23 points and face Manchester United at Old Trafford on Boxing Day. Next up, we have Man City, who faced off against West Ham, defeated them 3-0. Erling Haaland passed 200 goal involvements in Europe's top 5 leagues as City eased to a 3-0 win, scoring 2 goals and assisting another. Haaland, who scored his 100th Premier League goal earlier this month in a 5-4 victory at Fulham, now boasts 124 goal involvements in English top flight. That's 104 goals and 50 assists. And 77 in the Bundesliga, 62 goals and 15 assists, totaling 201 goal involvements in 165 games. For context, that is far fewer than Luis Suarez, who took 192 games, Kylian Mbappe, who took 194 games, Messi, who took 195 games to bring up a double century of goal involvements in Europe's top 5 leagues. Cristiano Ronaldo, needed a full 100 games more to achieve that mark that Haaland achieved in 165 games. And with 19 Premier League goals, Haaland has matched the record for most goals before Christmas in a single season, along with Andy Cole, who achieved this feat as well in 1992-93, Kevin Phillips in 1999-2000 season, and Luis Suarez in the 2013-14 season. He helped City to become only the third Premier League side in history to score 3 or more goals in 6 successive wins against a particular team, after Arsenal against Sunderland in October 2007 and Manchester United against Nottingham Forest in December of 2022. City are rolling. That's their 5th consecutive Premier League win, and they remain just 2 points behind Arsenal and face a trip to Forest this weekend on the Boxing Day weekend. Moving on to Tottenham 1, Liverpool 2. Goals were scored by Richarlison, Isak, and Hugo Ekitike. Liverpool held on against 9-men Tottenham to fire them to victory on Saturday. Spurs played over an hour at a numerical disadvantage after Xavi Simons was sent off for a rash lunge on Virgil van Dijk just past the half-hour mark. Liverpool made their numerical advantage count in the 56th minute when Isak, as a halftime substitute, slotted in following a mistake from Christian Romero. Isak, however, suffered an injury following that goal and had to be substituted. after he was clattered into by Mickey van der Ven as he scored. He became just the second player to be subbed on, score, then be subbed off for Liverpool in a Premier League game after Yossi Benayoun against Man City in November of 2009. The Reds, though, brushed off that blow after Randall Kolo hit the crossbar on the other end. Ekitike made it 2-0 with a towering header. Yet, Richarlison scored just over 2 minutes into his introduction from the Spurs bench to give Spurs hope. Romero, though, did not help Spurs' cause as he ludicrously kicked out at Konate and received his marching orders in stoppage time. Spurs have rounded out 2025 by losing 11 home league games, their most ever in a calendar year across club history. Liverpool, meanwhile, have now won 3 straight games and are unbeaten in 6. They face Wolves, Leeds, Fulham in their next 3 before facing a trip to the Emirates to face Arsenal on January the 8th. They are currently 5th and 10 points behind Arsenal, so they will look to close the gap before that game. Speaking of the league leaders, Arsenal defeated Everton 1-0 thanks to a Victor Gyökeres penalty on Saturday. Mikel Arteta's team found themselves in second place ahead of kickoff after City had won 3-0, as I mentioned. It was ultimately a moment of madness from Jake O'Brien that helped decide the contest, with the Everton defender inexplicably handling while trying to clear Declan Rice corner. Not sure what he was attempting there. Gyökeres lashed the penalty. That was one of just 2 shots on target for Arsenal in that game, with Bukayo Saka seeing a shot cleared off the line in the second half as well. Since the start of his first season with Sporting, the Sweden international Gyökeres has converted all 19 penalties that he's taken in league competition. That's 17 out of 17 in the Portuguese top flight and 2 for 2 for Arsenal in the Premier League thus far. So he seems to have been getting back to some sort of form, Gyökeres, and Saka is usually the penalty taker. So the fact that Saka gave him the penalty shows that there's a lot of team camaraderie there and wanting to get Gyökeres firing, right? Arsenal remain top, 2-point lead over Man City, but they're looking vulnerable as the busy period is approaching. They face Brighton, Aston Villa, and Bournemouth before welcoming Liverpool. Move on to Villa, who defeated United 2-1 thanks to a Morgan Rogers brace. Inspired Aston Villa to another win as they won their 10th game in all competitions for the first time since 1914. Rogers called a sublime opener before restoring Villa's lead with another impressive finish as Unai Emery's men closed the gap on Premier League leaders back to just 3 points. As mentioned, Villa have won 10 games in a row in all competitions. In the Premier League, meanwhile, only in 2023-24 have they held more points on Christmas than they have currently this season. They have 39 points this season so far, eclipsing that record of 36 in the 23-24 season. United were missing key attackers in Brian Mbeumo and Amad Diallo, who have left for AFCON. This was further compounded when Bruno Fernandes was subbed off at halftime with an apparent hamstring injury. Matheus Cunha attempted to board the load. He had 6 attempts and created 2 chances, though he did squander that gilt-edged chance to level for a second time when he headed wide from about 6 yards out. Cunha, though, has scored in each of his last 3 Premier League appearances against Aston Villa, which marks his longest streak against any opponent in the competition, also 3 against Leicester City. He will be key in the upcoming weeks as United seem like they would be missing on Bruno Fernandes for some time. As mentioned, he has a apparent hamstring injury. And also, as mentioned, Mbeumo and Amad Diallo have gone to African Cup of Nations, so the onus is going to be on Cunha to carry United's attack in the interim, along with Benjamin Sesko, who was also the big money signing this season. So it's going to be interesting to see how United go forward without the high-flying Mbeumo and Amad Diallo. Aston Villa face Chelsea this weekend at the Bridge, and United face Newcastle at Old Trafford on Boxing Day. And that rounds up the ending of the Premier League roundup. Just going to recap the league standings quickly. Arsenal remain top on 39 points. City is second on 37 points. Villa in third on 36 points. Chelsea in fourth on 29 points, tied with Liverpool, who are on fifth, also on 29 points. Sunderland round out the top 6 on 27 points. We're going to move over to La Liga, where there was also round 17 action. Right, and we're going to begin with Madrid, who faced Sevilla and defeated them 2-0. Kylian Mbappe equaled Cristiano Ronaldo's Real Madrid record for goals in a calendar year as he netted in a 2-0 win over 10-man Sevilla. Mbappe, celebrating his 27th birthday, scored Los Blancos' second goal, converting an 86-minute penalty to net his 59th and final goal of the year. Rodrigo, who also hit the frame of the goal, won the spot kick for Mbappe, with the Brazilian having previously set up Jude Bellingham for Madrid's opener in the first half. Mbappe's first few months at Madrid were tough, but ever since the start of the year, he has scaled dizzying heights. His 59 goals drew level with the Madrid record set by Ronaldo in 2013. In fact, only one player, and that's Lionel Messi, with 79 in 2012 for Barcelona, has netted more goals in 1 year for a club in Europe's top 5 leagues across all competitions. Keep in mind, Messi scored 91 in that year for club and country, but 79 for Barcelona. So just to distinguish the record, because we know that record for Messi is very famous, right? So despite the 2-0 win, where it might sound like if it was a comfortable win for Madrid, Sevilla were whipping through Madrid at will, conceding 14 shots, and we were having to be saved by Thibaut Courtois over and over again. So Sevilla, who aren't the best team in La Liga, still were able to comfortably beat Madrid's press, test Courtois on multiple occasions. And if it wasn't for Courtois, I'm sure the result would definitely have been different. The performance was underwhelming, I'd say again. I'd have to mention how lackluster the midfield is once more, and I'd have to single out a few players. Aurelien Tchouameni. Not even 5 minutes into the game, and there were some sloppy giveaways from him, poor passes, poor miscontrols from someone who is supposed to be a midfield anchor. It's not good enough. And this has been the theme for him, I would say, since arriving at the club. Yes, he's had bright moments, but for the most part, he's not been an adequate replacement for Casemiro, right? And we know how important that pivot position is if you're trying to be a serious title-winning team, right? And with Tchouameni there, we're seeing his flaws in possession and out of possession. He's supposed to be a defensive monster, and he gets caught lacking a lot, right? So despite him being a presence very physically imposing, he doesn't provide enough steel in front of Madrid's back four for my liking, and it's clear. Also, it's also clear that Arda Güler and Jude Bellingham are not compatible together. Whether Arda plays deep and Jude plays high, or vice versa, it's clear that both of these players cannot be at their best while on the field at the same time, at least in the current setup, or at least from what we've seen so far. This is a season, this is at least 6 months now worth of evidence since, let's say, Jude Bellingham has come back from his shoulder injury and Arda has been a starter from the start of the season. Before Bellingham came back and Madrid were playing well without him in the team, there was always mutters that it would be difficult to incorporate him and Güler in the team. And ever since Bellingham came back, that has been proven to be right. Because you have two players who are, let's say, traditional number 10s. Maybe in Bellingham, he's not necessarily that type, but he's, let's say, a modern number 10, whereas Güler is a traditional number 10 who is looking to feed the attackers. Their roles are clashing, and it's not helping the team. We're missing that controlling type player that I always mention here on GSCP that we've missed since we've lost Toni Kroos and Luka Modric, right? And Shabba has been trying to mold Güler into that type player, but it's clear that he's lacking physically, for sure, and some positioning issues he also has as well, because we saw in El Clasico he gave away a goal, and he was also lacking in the Madrid derby. So the incompatibleness of Jude and Arda is something that Shabby is going to have to continue to work on as long as he remains coach, because these are two high-profile players and would there would be controversy, more controversy for Bellingham, but there would also be, media coverage and, let's say, hot takes about if Arda is on the bench considering he started the season so well. So Xabi Alonso definitely has a lot to work on with the midfield. Something else I wanted to touch on is just on Mbappe's record in perspective with Ronaldo's record in 2013. Now, Mbappe scored his 59 goals in 59 games. Ronaldo did his in 50 games. I would say that it feels like Ronaldo's goals carried more weight. They were more important, right? Mind you, Mbappe scored a hat-trick in El Clasico, where we lost 4-3. He scored in the first Clasico of the season, this season as well, where we won 2-1. So I'm not saying that he's never scored an important goal for Madrid. He also scored a hat-trick against Man City. He scored a goal away at Man City as well in that same two-legged tie. But too often he's gone missing, in my opinion, right? The team, since he's coming, has moved away from being team oriented, in my opinion, and has now been geared towards feeding him and ensuring that he scores. For example, I would take the team that he left in Paris Saint-Germain for prime example. Luis Enrique mentioned that he'd rather have 5 players who would score 12 and 16 and 14 and 18 than to have one player who's scoring 40 and then the rest of your team is lacking behind. Keep in mind that Mbappe joined a team that won the Champions League and La Liga without, a big number 9 who was scoring 40 goals. In that season, we had Vinicius, we had Bellingham, we had Rodrigo, we had Joselu sharing the goals around. And as a result, the team was playing together and not focused on feeding one individual as it seems that we have been doing now. Now, I'm not going to say that Mbappe's goals are a problem. No one is ever going to say that someone scoring goals is a problem. But when it's at the detriment of the rest of the team, it's definitely something to be mentioned. Definitely, because no one can convince me that these players who just a season prior had won a league and Champions League double are now less than what they're showing. Yes, Vinicius has been poor. Yes, Rodrigo has been poor. Recently just broke his duck and now Vinicius is on a duck, going almost 20 games without a goal. But I'd say it's because their roles have been altered so dramatically due to Mbappe's presence. It's like they're unsure of themselves. So when they get into goal scoring positions, they're hesitant, just as I was there. They're hesitant, and it's costing the team. So where at the end of the season, Mbappe might hold up the golden boot and the Pichichi for the most goals in La Liga, Madrid is gonna suffer as a result. We're not gonna win anything. Currently 4 points behind Barca in the title race. Not looking like one of the best teams in the Champions League thus far this season. And this would be the second consecutive season that we've not won either of those trophies. And for all the flack that we used to give Ancelotti in his time, that would never have been the case that we'd go 2 seasons without a trophy. So while Mbappe's goals are great for him personally, they make him look good. He's getting all of the praise. That's not something that Madrid fans are going to celebrate at the end of the season when Barca win another league title and someone else wins the Champions League that we crave so much. So I don't want to say it's a coincidence that as he left Paris Saint-Germain, they won a treble and joined a team that won a league and Champions League double, and now they're struggling to look cohesive, but something isn't adding up, right? So the stats, like I said, the stats would look great for him, the golden boots and everything, but poor overall performance and no trophies at the end of the day would determine your future and not your future, I meant to say like your legacy. Because looking back, if we're being real here, Mbappe has only won the World Cup as a major significant trophy in his career. Aside from those insignificant league titles in France, let's be honest, he has not won anything major in his career aside from the World Cup in 2018, right? So this is something that is going to be interesting to see how it pans out. Obviously, I have all hopes that, he could snap out of, this funk that he has in terms of seem to be playing for himself and tries to be more team oriented. That would eventually help us to win more trophies, right? So that was Madrid's last game before the Christmas break. After the Christmas break, Madrid is going to face Betis at home before traveling to Saudi Arabia to face Atletico Madrid in the Supercopa semi-final. Villarreal lost 2-0 against Barca, and they restored their 4-point lead at the top of La Liga over 10-men Villarreal. An early Rafinha penalty and Lamine Yamal's second half strike secured all 3 points for Hansi Flick's side at the Estadio de la Ceramica. Barca are now unbeaten in each of their last 18 La Liga away games against Villarreal, winning each of their last 8. Lewandowski climbed off the bench to make his 500th appearance in the top 5 leagues, making him the 10th striker to do this in the 21st century. Rafinha became the first Blaugrana player to win a penalty and hit the post in a single match in any competition since Luis Suarez against Madrid in 2018. And Flick's side have hit the woodwork 14 times in La Liga this season, more than any other team in Europe's top 5 leagues. Barca have scored 169 goals in 60 games across all competitions in the year of 2025. Only 4 times have they netted more in a calendar year, and those were all during the Messi era. So very impressive stats there by Hansi Flick's men, who will face Espanyol in the derby in their first game back after the Christmas break, followed by Bilbao away, followed by Bilbao in the Supercopa semi-final. Girona 0, Atletico Madrid 3, Koke, Gallagher, and Griezmann on the score sheet. Koke scored a stunning goal. Conor Gallagher and Antoine Griezmann were also on target at the Montelivi as Diego Simeone's men returned to third place in La Liga, 9 points behind Barca. The visitors took the lead in the 13th minute as the ball broke kindly for Koke, who arrowed a superb strike into the top corner for his 50th goal for the club. Jan Oblak came to the rescue at the other end to deny former Atletico man Axel Witsel before Atleti doubled their advantage in the 38th minute. Gallagher, 10 minutes after replacing the injured Nico Gonzalez, saw his 20-yard effort deflect beyond the Girona keeper. Oblak made another smart save after the break to deny Alex Moreno, but Los Rojiblancos secured the victory in the second minute of stoppage time as substitute Antoine Griezmann neatly sent home for his 4th goal in 3 games. Once again, Griezmann produced the goods from the bench, netting his 5th goal as a substitute this term, more than any other player in Europe's top 5 leagues. Atletico have scored 10 goals via substitute so far in La Liga this season, and that's more than any other team. As for Girona, Coach Michel has now lost 8 of his last 10 La Liga meetings with Simeone, extending the highest number of defeats against a single manager in the competition. After the Christmas break, Atleti faced Sociedad, followed by the Madrid derby in the Supercopa semi-final. So just to recap the La Liga standings, Barca remain top on 46 points, Real Madrid in second on 42 points, Atletico Madrid in third on 37 points, Villarreal in fourth on 35 points with 2 games in hand. Moving over quickly to Serie, this weekend of Serie was condensed due to the semi-final and final of the Italian SuperCup taking place in Saudi Arabia. Napoli won that final 2-0 versus Bologna thanks to a David Neres brace. Napoli defeated Milan 2-0 in the semi-final with Neres again on the score sheet alongside Rasmus Højlund. Bologna advanced to the final by upsetting Inter 3-2 on penalties after a 1-1 draw. The biggest fixture saw Juve defeat Roma 2-1 thanks to goals from Openda and Conceição, taking them up to 5th place in Serie A, 1 point behind Roma in 4th. The top 5 in Serie A is all separated by 1 point. However, Napoli, Milan, and Inter would each have a game in hand due to them playing in the Italian SuperCup semi-final. Moving over quickly to the Bundesliga, Bayern Munich ended 2025 with a 9-point lead at the Bundesliga summit following a 4-0 rout of Heidenheim, as Harry Kane etched his name into the record books again. Josip Stanisic, Michael Olise, Luis Diaz, and Harry Kane were all on target for Vincent Kompany's men at the Voith Arena. Kane had to wait until late on, but he capped off a magnificent 2025 in which he netted a career best 51 club goals by registering his 100th goal involvement in Germany's top tier. He has now scored 81 goals in the Bundesliga, providing 19 assists, reaching triple figures in just 78 league games. The England captain is the quickest player to do so in Germany's top tier since data collection began in 04-05. He achieved defeat in 41 games, fewer than the previous record holder, who was Arjen Robben, who did that in 119 games. It marks the third calendar year in which, without a top flight defeat on the road for Bayern Munich, after doing so in 1986 and 2013. In the midweek, Arsenal advanced to the semi-final of the League Cup, where they will face Chelsea after edging Crystal Palace in a penalty shootout after a 1-1 draw in regulation. Arsenal will now face Chelsea, as I mentioned, in the semi-final of the EFL Cup. Moving on swiftly to the African Cup of Nations that kicked off in Morocco on Sunday, and the field is wide open as ever. So thus far, at the time of taping, all of the favorites have won so far, including the host Morocco, South Africa, Egypt, the Democratic Republic of Congo, Senegal, Nigeria, Tunisia, Burkina Faso, Algeria, Ivory Coast, and Cameroon, all defeating teams who you would consider inferior opponents. I would say that Senegal has looked most impressive thus far, defeating Botswana 3-0 thanks to a Nicholas Jackson brace. The Lions of Teranga have now won their opening game of each of their last 6 editions of the competition. Senegal are also now unbeaten in their past 12 matches in the tournament, excluding penalty shootouts, and have not trailed in any of those matches. Certainly looking like the favorites that they are. The host Morocco were also impressive, taking down Comoros 2-0. Algeria were also impressive, taking down Sudan 3-0 thanks to a brace from Riyad Mahrez, who became Algeria's all-time top scorer at AFCON with 8 goals. Meanwhile, Egypt, Burkina Faso, Nigeria, and South Africa were all made to sweat for their 2-1 victories. Cameroon and Ivory Coast both won 1-0 versus Gabon and Mozambique, respectively. Mali and Zambia has been the only game drawn thus far. Very interesting to see how that tournament would pan out. Quickly moving on to some NBA Christmas Day preview, as this is being shot on Christmas Eve. You know, there's traditional Christmas games that would take place on December 25th, and those games are as follows. The Cavs will take on the Knicks. Thus far this season, the Knicks have been disappointing, I'd say, and they face the NBA Cup champion New York Knicks in what would be a highly anticipated game at the Madison Square Garden. Moving on to the Dallas Mavericks, who will play the Golden State Warriors. Probably not the best game of the day, but Klay Thompson going home versus his old team against the Golden State Warriors will be something to see. It would be interesting to see the reception he gets at his old home ground. Steph Curry on Christmas Day is always a sight to see as well, so it will be very interesting to see how that match pans out. Moving on to the Rockets versus the Lakers. This will be the first matchup between Kevin Durant and LeBron James on Christmas since 2018. We don't know how long we have left in the league for both of these players, so it's something to definitely tune into. When they were at the peak of their powers, when LeBron was in Cleveland and Durant was in OKC, not OKC, was in Golden State, and they met in those finals, those were all-time matchups. So they may not be at that level right now, and the Rockets would seem to be a better team at the moment than the Lakers, who are up and down, and we're not sure on Luka's status for the game as he missed out last night. But it would be very interesting to see another matchup between LeBron and KD. Moving on to what most would say is the game of the day, which would be the San Antonio Spurs taking on the Oklahoma City Thunder. So far this season, they've met 2 times, including last night, and the Spurs are 2-0. So this is going to be a game that I think OKC will take very seriously. And in both games, one went close, and last night was more of a blowout. So OKC will definitely want to put some things right. Right? They're still clearly the best team in the league. They're still the number one seed, still the reigning champions, still have the MVP. And while the Spurs are a up and coming team, they certainly seem to have OKC's number thus far. And it would certainly be interesting to see how that game plays out on Christmas Day. Wembanyama versus Chet, we saw that Wembanyama mentioned that there's not much of a rivalry between them, basically saying that, in other words, that Chet is not on his level, right? So the matchup is really between SGA as OKC's best player and Wemby as the Spurs' best player, as the two marquee names there tomorrow. Finally, to close out the night, it would be the Minnesota Timberwolves versus the Denver Nuggets. The MVP thus far, I would say, Nikola Jokic is going to take on the surging T-Wolves with Mr. Anthony Edwards and his team with Julius Randle and Rudy Gobert and the likes. So that will be a very interesting game. We've seen these teams match up in the playoffs over the past few seasons, and that will certainly be a slugfest out west. So definitely some interesting matchups on Christmas Day. Certainly looking forward to that Spurs Thunder game, and definitely gonna be taking in those games. One thing I wanted to mention as well in a different sport before I name my man of the match and close off this Christmas Eve episode is just to quickly touch on the ongoing Ashes series between England and Australia. The Aussies won the third test to go up 3-0 in just 11 days to take an unassailable lead in the five-match test series. England were chasing a daunting 435 in the fourth innings to try to keep the series alive, but fell well short and were bowled out for 352. Coming into the series, there were high expectations on the shoulders of Captain Ben Stokes and his team, but a string of underwhelming performances meant that the wait to regain the Ashes will go on for the Englishmen. That is now no Ashes win in Australia since 2010-11, and the Aussies have held the Ashes since 2017. Their swashbuckling and aggressive style, dubbed as baseball, was outdone by smart, basic cricket by the Aussies, who outbowled, outbatted, and outfielded their opponents. They took stunning catches, got batting contributions from top to bottom, and outstanding bowling performances by their veterans Mitchell Starc, Pat Cummins, and Nathan Lyon and the likes. Questions will be asked of Ben Stokes and Brendan McCullum, as this Australian team was never even at full strength, with Josh Hazelwood being out of the series for each game so far. Steve Smith missing a game, Pat Cummins missing 2 games and is going to miss the rest of the series, as well as Nathan Lyon missing a game as well in the series. So the fact that England has not even gotten Australia's full 11 and they've been so underwhelming, it's a testament to the, let's say, overrated nature of some of these players and how the English media would have built up their chances to no avail, right? And it just goes to show how professional and consistent the Australian team are, especially at home. So shout out to Pat Cummins and Steve Smith and his men as they retain the Ashes in Australia again. So just moving on to my man of the match before we end today's episode. My man of the match is Morgan Rogers. Morgan Rogers became the first Aston Villa player since Dion Dublin in 1998 to net in back-to-back Premier League matches for Villa, like I said. He has now scored 21 goals across all competitions since the start of last season. Aged 23 and 148 days, he is the youngest player to net 20 plus for a Premier League team in this period. So Morgan Rogers is my man of the match for this week. And with that, here ends another episode of Global Sports from a Caribbean perspective. From your host, Shabba. We want to wish you guys a very Merry Christmas here from us at GSCP. We hope that you continue to tune in to us as we provide the best takes from the best teams with the best players here on Global Sports from a Caribbean perspective. One Global.